Yes, welcome to the Purple Positivity Podcast for August the 31st. Oh my gosh, it's the last day of the month, 2018. I am your host, the amazingly adorable Rebecca Thistle, podcasting to you live-ish from my new used desk in my apartment, which I call Jeffrey Thistle Work. Yes. Yeah, I'm feeling better today, so I'm back at my new used desk rather than on my new used couch using the good microphone. So, so as I often do, I was browsing around on one of my groups on Facebook, and somebody posted something about always having knee-jerk reactions. And, I mean, it was seriously one of the most self-aware posts. I went, wow, that sounds like something I would have posted a while back, actually. And she was talking about having a knee-jerk reaction to bullies. And she goes, I know, your thoughts and your feelings change, that your thoughts dictate everything. But, I mean, how do you, actually change? How do you actually do it? And I said, well, obviously, your thoughts change. So you gotta change your thoughts. So, I went on to explain to her what I've talked about this on this show in the past, but I don't think I've ever done an actual entire show about it. So let me start where I started in my response to this post. About 4 years ago, 4.5, almost 5 years ago, actually, shortly after my son was born, I was still living with his father, JC, and Umbridge, and a couple other people, and I was horribly depressed. I mean, horribly depressed. And I mean, everybody wanted to go, oh, it's postpartum depression. And I'm sitting there going, no, it's the same depression I've had since I was 9 years old, motherfuckers. I just ironically had a baby recently. Because with what I've seen with postpartum depression in other women is generally that they have a hard time bonding with their child or doing mommy things and stuff like that. Actually, being a mother was the only thing keeping me alive at that point. I was living in a very toxic situation, and I was horribly depressed. Excuse me. And I kept having this thought in my head. Every time I felt the weight of the world crushing me. Every time I felt the pain and the sadness, I'd have this thought, I wish I were dead. Now, I wasn't actively suicidal. I really didn't want to die. I had a baby. I wanted to live for my baby, but this thought kept coming up. And I went, this is not right. So I went back into therapy. And I told my therapist what was going on. He asked me, why do you wish you were dead? And I thought about it, and I said, I guess on some level, it seems wrong to me, because I'm dead inside, but I'm alive on the outside, and the two should match. And he asked me, well, then why don't you wish you were alive? And I went, huh. So from that moment on, anytime I had that thought, I wish I were dead. And I had that thought for a good long time. But anytime I had that thought, this is what my thought process was. This is what was going through my head. I wish I were dead. No. I wish I were alive. I wish I were dead. No. I wish I were alive. I wish I were dead. No. I wish I were alive. Eventually, over the course of days, weeks, months, that thought, I wish I were dead, stopped coming up. And instead, when I felt the pain and when I felt the hurt and when I felt the sadness and this overwhelming, crushing weight of being in that toxic situation, my go-to thought was no longer, I wish I were dead. It was, I wish I were alive. And I changed that thought so completely that fast forward 4 years later, at a time when I was passively suicidal and I felt like my life was over, and I don't really want to get into that at this time. I talked about it way back when I started this show. But even at that time, when I honestly felt like the world would be better off if I were dead, I wasn't having the thought, I wish I were dead. I was having the thought, I wish I were alive. I wish I were alive. I wish I weren't feeling like I have no place in this world. I wish I weren't feeling like my life had no purpose. But I wish I were alive. It was, but I changed that thought so completely, and I call that process that I used where I acknowledge that I have this thought, I wish I were dead. No, I wish I were alive. I call that playing cognitive whack-a-mole. You know, those arcade games? I never actually played the whack-a-mole game. I played like the one with the crocodiles, and you know, like the crocodile would come out and you had to whack it with a mallet and it went back in. And then another one come out, you whack it with a mullet. A mullet? Yeah, you whack it with a stupid hairdo. You'd whack it with a mallet. Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. But you know what I'm talking about. And, you know, except when you're playing cognitive whack-a-mole, there we go, rather than it just being starting off slow, like with the arcade game. You know, it's very slow. You have one, and then a second later, another one, and then a second later, another one, and then, you know, as you consistently whack them, the speed would go up, and so you'd have like 2 or 3 coming out of their holes at the same time. With cognitive whack-a-mole, you're gonna have that thought persist. It's gonna go in reverse. It's gonna start with all the time, but the more you whack it down, the less it comes up. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of persistence. But it can be done. And I mean, this can be done for any thought. There was, I was taking in, I believe this was in abnormal psychology. I took 2 classes with the same professor, and it was in the same classroom. And, but I'm pretty sure it was abnormal psychology that he brought in a guest speaker from, Shades of Hope or something, some rehab center. And, this guest speaker talked to us about a little bit about this concept of neuroplasticity, which I'm sure you've heard. It's it's a word that gets out there. And the way he explained it was he walked in front of us, just paced back and forth at the front of the classroom. He said, look, if I do this enough, I will eventually create it'll take time, but I'll eventually create a little trench. That's how your thought patterns work in the brain. You have this feeling, therefore you have this thought. You have this feeling, therefore you have this thought. And it's ingrained like a trench. Now, it is possible to create another trench, another thought, so that initial pathway will always be there, but it won't necessarily be the one that always takes place. You can redirect those thoughts. And I thought about, in cartoons, when a character's sort of talking themselves in circles and they're pacing around, literally in a circle. This is the greatest metaphor for what overthinking can do. But they'll be talking something out, but they're talking in circles, and therefore they're thinking in circles, and they're walking in circles, and they literally dig this trench because you know what I'm talking about. That trench is there, but you can hop out and create another one. And I don't want to. Let me stop right here and say, I don't want y'all to think that because I did this successfully one time in my life that I am now the expert on how to do this, and that I am always great about changing my thought patterns. I've got a lot of thought patterns that I'm still changing. I have a lot of thought patterns that I have already changed, that I have a lot more that I'm still changing. And I have a lot more that I haven't changed yet. So I'm in the same place as you. The only thing is, I have an idea of how to do this. I'm just not always good about using it, Like, I don't know. I always thought it was funny how my dad and my stepdad, for that matter, always had like these fancy tools, or I mean even not so fancy tools, with these, like a huge socket wrench set, or tons and tons of screwdrivers. And my stepdad actually probably used them more than my dad ever did. I just sat there like, but they had these tools that they never used. And that's kind of how I am, and I'm getting really frustrated with myself right now about some of the really messed up thoughts going through my head on a day-to-day basis. So that's part of why I'm talking about this. Yes, it came up on one of my groups, but it came up because it's something I need to remind myself of. Anything I talk about on this show, any technique that I share, anything, it's something that I have used in the past, or it's something that I need to use right now, or both. So I just want to be clear about that. But yeah, playing cognitive whack-a-mole is the most effective, if not necessarily the easiest, but the most effective strategy for changing your thoughts. And when you change your thoughts, your actions and your words will follow. So going back to this post, after I explained all this to this woman about, changing your thoughts, cognitive whack-a-mole and all that, I said, now when it comes to reacting, I have two techniques that I've heard work. I have two techniques. One